Hey guys, I'm Dimension Jump, and today I'll be talking about my favourite items from every single 3D Zelda game. Now, when it comes to the Legend of Zelda series, it's quite well known for its dungeon crawling, its the different worlds that you can get to explore, and another big thing is the items that you can collect and use throughout the game, or each of the games that you explore in, and I would say the items are really cool, and I think when it comes to 3D games, all of the items that you can get to use are quite fun to use as well when it comes to like dungeon exploration or doing or reaching new areas or collecting items or additional items or hard pieces depending on the game you're playing. And yeah, I think there's a lot of really cool items in the 3D games. And when it comes to this particular list, I'll be talking about one item per game. So if I use an example like the hammer, for example, in Ocarina of Time, I can't talk about the hammer again in the Wind Waker, for example, because I'll just be repeating my points. So yeah, so I can't really I won't be reusing the same item in from one game than using it in another game. So yeah. So to start off with, in Ocarina of Time, it's the hover boots. Now, when it comes to the hover boots, I think they are an interesting item, and I do like how they're used because the description of them says is that basically allows Link to hover for a few seconds, and I think they're quite useful. I think because there are some parts of the game, I think in one of the temples you get to explore towards the later part of the game. I think it's when you have to where you get Impa as one of the sages in that particular dungeon. It's quite useful for that one, I believe. If I don't 100% remember, I think it's the Shadow Temple. I believe you use the hover boots in, and you can also use them in the final fight with Ganondorf and during the first phase because he will destroy some platforms with one of his attacks, and you can equip the hover boots, and then so you can get to the main platform where Ganondorf is. Now, the drawback to the hover boots is that they're a bit slippery, in that it's kind of like ice physics, but on your feet, and that whenever you're walking about, you will slip and slide about the place, and it will take you like 3 seconds to fully stop. But as a whole, I would say the hover boots are an interesting and fun item to use, and they're quite useful in certain situations. So yeah, from Majora's Mask is the bunny hood. Now, the bunny hood is probably the best non-transformation mask in the whole game, because before you get the Goron mask or Epona, the bunny hood basically makes you run faster. It's basically 2 times speed for you, and yeah, it makes you just run from one side of the map to the other side quite quickly, and it's probably good before you get you get the bunny hood. You get the bunny hood after you get the Goron mask, but even though the Goron mask is technically better of getting you to one place or one side of the map to the other side, the bunny hood is still good to use a whole lot of the time when it comes to just getting to a certain place faster when the Goron mask or Epona might not be in use or might not be useful in certain situations. But yeah, the bunny hood, it looks ridiculous on Link, but it's still really cool to use whenever you're playing or using the particular item throughout the course of Majora's Mask. So yeah, from the Wind Waker is the boomerang. Now, the boomerang is pretty much a staple in the Zelda series. It's been used in a lot of variety of different games. But when it comes to the Wind Waker, and kind of technically also in Twilight Princess with the Gale boomerang, the boomerang in the Wind Waker can lock onto multiple targets. The Gale boomerang can do the same thing in Twilight Princess. And I think that's a slightly bit better version of the boomerang as an item as a whole. But what I like about the boomerang from the Wind Waker is that not only can it target several things, but I think it can also make it can stun enemies for a bit, which is quite cool, and that leaves them open for an attack. And yeah, I think the boomerang is quite cool, and I think it's just one of those items that I think as the games move on or progress, I think it should have some sort of additional purpose than just stunning enemies or use, because it is used for hitting switches and stuff. I personally think that with each game that does introduce the boomerang, it should have an additional thing. So with the boomerang in the Wind Waker, it can hit multiple targets. With the Gale boomerang in Twilight Princess, not only can it hit multiple targets, but it can also uncover certain enemies or take out fires, that sort of thing, because it's called the Gale boomerang. But I think with the boomerang as a whole in the Wind Waker, it's quite cool, and it's quite a fun item to use every now and again. So yeah, from Twilight Princess is the ball and chain. Now this item is probably it's really fun, and it's probably a bit of an overpowered item as a whole, because it's one of those items that can be used at long and short range. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, because in Twilight Princess, before you spin it, you have to you just swing it around your head, and then once you found a particular target or like an enemy or an ice, like an ice wall, you will throw it, and then it can be pulled back to you. And it's a really cool item, and I think it's very useful in the dungeon that you get it in, that being, I believe, the Snowy Peak ruins. And yeah, it's just a very cool, fun item to use, and I think it's one of those items that's really powerful, and it's really good against when using against like long and short range and short and long ranged enemies. So yeah, from Skyward Sword is the claw shots. Now the claw shots have made appearances in several games. Sometimes by another name. In Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, The Wind Waker, and even A Link to the Past, it was called the hook shot, and then Twilight Princess came out and basically upgraded it, and you got 2 claw shots. And in Skyward Sword, I really like the claw shots. They're probably my favourite item in the whole Zelda series, mainly because it makes you feel like Spider-Man, and I think they're very useful in the games that you use the claw shots or the hook shots, depending on the game you're playing. But I'm mainly going to be talking about the claw shots. And when it comes to the claw shots in Skyward Sword, they're really fun to use, and they're really useful in the game as a whole, because when you get them in Lanayru Desert after doing the second trial to find to find Neru's flame. You use it to search around Lanayru Desert to find the location of it. But also when you go to the other locations, so Farron Woods or Eldon Volcano, you can use it to grapple onto vines or pea hats, or those flying things. I think they're called pea hats. I could be wrong. I'll put up what they're called, or along with a picture, to show you what I'm talking about. But yeah, I really do like the claw shots, and I think they're very useful of just getting you from place to place. And I really like the designs, because it's just basically these 2 gauntlets with a claw on them, and as well as a chain, and they're just really cool, and they do help you find secrets. Like in Skyward Sword, you can find several chests as well as goddess cubes, and they're really fun to use, and I think they're really enjoyable as an item as a whole. So yeah, from Breath of the Wild is the Stasis Rune. Now, this could technically be classed as more of an ability than an item, but I think the Stasis Rune, as well as the other runes you get in Breath of the Wild, could be classified as more as items, and because you use them to solve puzzles and stuff, when it comes to the shrines, or doing any of the divine beasts, or whenever you're just going around in the world of Hyrule in Breath of the Wild. And when it comes to the Stasis Rune, it's probably the best rune that you get out of all the other runes you get in the game. maybe excluding the motorcycle Zero, because that item, or that ability slash item, is really useful, and it's basically just a stand-in horse that you can just summon from your Sheikah slate. But when it comes to the status rune, it's basically it basically says what it does on a tin. It's an item that can freeze things in stasis, and then when you get to upgrade it, it's basically really overpowered. It's really OP, and what makes it OP is that when you before you upgrade it, you can just freeze a lot of basic objects like broken tree trunks or chests or rocks or boulders or pretty much anything that isn't an enemy. But when you upgrade it to the Stasis Rune Plus, pretty much every enemy can be frozen and you can just hit them a bunch of times. And I think when it comes to Stasis Rune, that's really cool. And I think it kind of brings the other ones down a bit, because the other runes you can use in the game are fun. I just think with the Stasis Rune, it's so much more useful, and I think it's more useful when it comes to fighting enemies or doing particular puzzles, depending on what the puzzle requires, if you do need the Stasis Rune. But as a whole, the Stasis Rune is just a really cool ability slash item that you can use, and it's really, really useful when the moment you get it, as well as the moment you upgrade it to the Stasis Rune Plus. So yeah. And from Tears of the Kingdom is Ascend. Now, you could say that Ascend is more of an ability than an item, since it's part of the hand abilities you get in Tears of the Kingdom. But I think I see Ascend as both an item and an ability, because you use it in various parts of the world, to use as puzzles or just to explore it as well. And that's why I kind of see with the runes from Breath of the Wild, I see them as both an item and an ability, where when it comes to like exploration and items and stuff like that. And with Ascend, I think it's probably similar to Stasis. It's very, very useful and very, very OP-ish, kind of, depending on who you ask. And because with Ascend, it's basically, you can just go from, if you're at the bottom of a mountain, for example, and you've got a bit of an edge, or a bit of a cliff, that's just jutting out of that particular part of the mountain, you can use Ascend to just jump up and just go through that particular bit of the mountain, and then you just be at the very top, or out of the particular area that you've ascended into. And it's very useful, and I think it's one of those abilities, or as well as items, that's very useful, and it's also very, very good if you're in if you want to combat the rain, because Ascend is one of the few things in Tears of the Kingdom, along with one of the armors you can get. I think it's a floppy armor, I believe. If you upgrade that, all the armor pieces for that particular one twice, you won't be able to fall off when it rains, because Ascend as well, similar to the floppy armor, allows you to just bypass the rain altogether, depending on where you are in Hyrule, if it's raining or not. And it's very useful, and I think it's one of those items, as well as abilities, that can also help you with combat as well as items. So, as puzzles, because with puzzles you will have some shrines that will need you to use Ascend, and if you're fighting an enemy like a Stone Talos, or one of the Gleoks, I don't know if it's a moment. I think it's one of the ones near the Spectacle Rock. I believe that one you can use this ability to your advantage and just deal a lot of damage to enemies like the Zone Talos and the Gleoks. So yeah, as a whole, the Ascend item is really useful, and I think it's really, really cool to use, and it's really fun. So yeah, so that's been me talking about my favourite Zelda items from every 3D Zelda game. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next video.